Hey, hey everyone. Tessa here with the 99 Dev Problem Show with my dear friend Carl Alexander. Carl, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Carl. I have a wonderful Carl board behind me. That's like a
Which I love.
whole. That's like he's there to creep out people, but like and Zoom calls with clients. But
Love it.
yeah, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe myself at this point. But basically, since this is a dev thing, I'm a programmer. I started programming when I'm 41. I started programming. I was like 6. So I've been doing it for
Dang.
a while. Yeah, I did logo. I don't know if you know logo. Like it was like logo
I
writer. It was like
don't.
an Apple thing. It was a little turtle,
Oh,
and
no.
you could draw and stuff like that. At I think I was 8 or 10. I was in the news because I did like a robotics thing that was like controlled by the computer. Like there was an animation and it would like basically run the animation and then control motors. So like one year I had a Ferris wheel. Another year I had the more complicated one was I had a what do you call those things? Sorry, my first language is not English, FYI. So, like those, it's like they float above the water. Like there's like the hydro.
Like a hoverboard?
Yeah, but it's the actual like ship.
Like the water kind.
It's like
Oh, yeah.
yeah. They have like fans underneath, and then they lift. So you have two
Mm-hmm.
fans controlling the thing. So I had two fans controlled by motor, like in a pool.
Dang.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. But yeah, that was all
So,
logo. Then I did basic. I did like
so you're
those
just like a true
RPG.
nerd.
I'm a true nerd. Like I'm a true to the bone nerd, basically. But I always loved programming. Like I've done teaching, I've done like writing books. Like I always compare it to Legos. Yeah, so
Yes.
like programming to me is Legos, basically. It's like Legos with code. Like you're like, oh, what do you
Uh,
feel like building today? Okay, cool. And then you can make it a reality. I'm like, what's not to love about that? I mean, that comes back to what we were talking when we just went live, basically. You want to go
yeah.
back to that? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, well, like let's dive into that.
yeah,
One quick thing I like to ask firsthand. So the
yeah.
let's address the Lego comment first off. I
Okay,
don't know if you noticed, but it's in my logo. And so my Friday guest, which was Noah
yeah.
Harris, also talked about how building as a developer is like Lego. So you two should hang out because you obviously love programming and Legos just the same.
Oh my God, I have so many programming things that I would love to hang out with I just want to hang out with programmers all the time, right?
See?
Like,
Yes.
I
That's
mean,
why
that's why you're in DevRel, right? You just like, I
yes.
mean, we can talk about that too. Like, that's why I built a product for developers because they're my people, and
Yes.
I want to build a product for my people, and it's easier to.
I agree.
So again, we're gonna talk for a while. There's gonna be,
We we
but
will be here for a while.
yeah. So yeah, I noticed that your thing was Legos. I love it.
Yes, because that's what it is, right? Is like, so the essence of my brand, and then I'm going to ask you
Yeah.
about your developer education, is what we're
Shit.
going to get into. But the essence of my brand is that, right? Is that at the end of the day, I've been in DevRel and I've built for developers. I don't necessarily build code for developers now, right? I build
Hmm.
programs, I build communities, I build
Yeah.
experiences, right? I build this
Hmm.
stuff that developers want. And so I very much wanted that same essence. So I really appreciate that you see that because that's so important. So okay,
Yeah.
if you were programming as a young child and doing some
Yeah.
very cool things,
Yeah.
did you actually go to school for anything related to technology? Do you have a college degree? Like, what's
Yes.
sort of
Yes.
your
Yeah.
education?
Yeah. So I have. I mean, you've seen my jacket, right? The Should I go get it? I'll go
Maybe.
get
I don't
it.
know if
It's
I've
my.
seen it. I'm gonna go
Okay.
get
Wait.
it.
I'll be back.
Carl's great, y'all. Also, I think he tripped on the way out because he made a little noise. The energy that developers have when it comes to hanging out with developers is like really legit.
Okay. So this is the
Yes,
most
I have seen that.
So this is my Queen's University in Canada. It's my applied science jacket. It's the
I
most
love
priceless thing
it.
that I own. So yeah,
I
I
love
did
that
do
you think that way.
college. So I did do college. I did computer engineering um, in the early 2000s. So I graduated in '06,
Cool.
and back then um, there wasn't like computer like software engineering like the way that there is now. So
Hmm.
basically, um, the way it worked was that you went into computer engineering, and then you could choose an option. You could choose software option or I've electrical option. And basically, it
Mm,
was computer engineering was kind of sitting in this weird area between electrical engineering and computer science.
yep.
And basically, they would steer you. Do you want to do a bit more computer science, or do you want to do a bit more electrical? So if you did, I have friends that did
Mm,
that, and they work more with telecoms now. Like so,
yes. Yeah.
like um, like I have a friend in New Brunswick, and he works with like antennas, basically like
Oh, super cool.
telecom antennas. And another friend that ended up at Nortel, like doing like switches and stuff like that. So,
Yep.
uh, but you didn't have like, so I just did the software option.
Yep.
Um, but before that, I just did like my high school had a couple of computer courses, but it was just like basic HTML. They
Hmm.
did have like 3D. I don't know what the software was called, but they had like 3D modeling. So I got into
I did that
3D,
too.
like 3D stuff. Like I did an N64 logo again. Bona fide nerd here. So like, so
Dude,
I did an
64 is where
N64
it's at,
logo.
though.
This N64 logo rotating. So and
Yes.
just but I ended up graduating, and then I didn't even do computer science stuff when I graduated. I might have
Ooh.
told you that story. I worked for a law firm. I graduated and I just started basically working as like level 2 tech support in a law
Um,
firm. That's because I'd been doing a lot of sysadmin work, right?
yep.
So I've been
I did in
sysadmin
the beginning
also
too.
for a long time. I've been a sysadmin since I'm about 16. Like I had like Windows servers, switches in my house. Like I before when routers like the thing that comes with your modem now for free used to
Yep.
cost like $400, and I was just like,
Yep.
oh, I can use a computer from work that they're throwing out and just like do all the networking myself. So I just did all of that. So
Heck
but
yes.
I but I went back to work for them, and because I didn't know what to do. Like nobody, it's like the catch 22 of like you graduate, how do you get experience, all that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and they offered me a job. Like I was in Greece, I was backpacking, and they were like, "Do you want to work?" And I was just like, "Sure." And I started working there, and I was doing sysadmin stuff for them. So I was higher up, but then I started building tools for them.
Ooh.
So I was like, because they wanted to do stuff, and I was just like, oh well, I love programming. Let me just like start do some .NET, like, and I started working with the SDKs, the Microsoft SDKs, to like just build
Hmm.
tools for them, like little UI applications
Yep.
that could just
Totally.
like for remote
Efficiency
connect.
to their day.
Yeah, but I mean that's like where I got into like programming. Like I just like building tools for devs, for people. Like basically, like that's what my little side business is. It's and I just, you know, I kind of liked it, and then I got bored there. That's the story of my life. Like I get bored.
I
Like
can
that's
relate to that.
the ADHD side basically, and I got bored, and I was like, that's at 2008. So like that, I literally quit when the crash happened, and then I was like,
Hmm.
okay, how am I gonna get a job? So I tried applying for jobs. Even if I coded all this life, I've never successfully passed a coding exam.
Those are
Uh,
really weird and tricky, though. So,
I've literally never like I would ace. I mean, you can see I'm pretty outgoing, and like I'm like one of the few, like I'm a rare nerd that somehow managed social skills. So
yes,
like
I can
so
relate.
I would kill the in-person interviews, and then they're like, we love you, we just need to make you pass a quick programming exam to just like see everything. And I was like, oh, I'll see you never, basically.
Why do
And
you think that is? Like, do you think it was because like the way that they
because
tested you, or just
it's not relevant. It's just not relevant. I'm super against like when I did hiring later on, like I just never passed anybody a programming exam. I just don't think it's relevant. I mean, we see it back and forth. Look, hiring is hard.
it is? It really is.
Like it's really hard. I fully grasp how hard, like I listened to a couple of podcasts, like there was Adam Watan that he was like, they got thousands of applications, and then they just ended up hiring somebody they knew. And I was like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That's why,
Yep.
like, I think networking is usually the best way
Hmm.
to get hired, because honestly, Uh, but it was just not in my brain. Like I was just like, I don't need to memorize like
Yeah.
what's an interface or like how to explain that. Like I was straight out of school. Like I was doing this like I knew how to program, but I just didn't know conceptually everything and I didn't remember it all. And I was just like, this is dumb and I just wouldn't do it. But I
Yep.
really wanted to build tools. Like I applied because I'm from Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
So for all the video game lovers, like there's a lot of video game studios. Like it's like the mecca. So like I had applied
Ooh.
to Ubisoft to be a tools dev, basically, to build tools for the developers because I was just like, I love building tools. Like it's
Yep.
just that's what I wanted to do. Like I just wanted to build stuff for devs even back then. And but yeah, I just couldn't pass a programming exam. And then the first place that didn't pass me a programming exam, I got the job basically. And that's like when I got into WordPress, like I literally built their entire PHP division and everything. And, you know, they were super happy, but yeah, they didn't pass me a programming test. They were like, I was applying for a .NET job and then they were like, oh, well, actually we're trying to do this thing with WordPress. Do you know anything about it? I'm like, no, but I can figure it out. And
Yay.
the rest is history. But yeah, it was hard. Like it's a weird journey. Like it was just a weird journey to like get programming jobs. Like yeah, it was just not what I was aiming for
Mm-hmm.
initially. I mean, that's like kind of my career trajectory is like it's always goes back to programming. Because I
Yep.
remember like we're looping back to what wanted to
We
talk
are.
about, but
We are.
it's kind of funny. But basically I did the sysadmin stuff. I built tools. I'm like, oh wait, I love programming. Why am I not doing that?
Yep.
Then I got hired to do the WordPress, the PHP stuff, and then like I was talking about, like before the show
Which is where
started,
we met.
which is where we met. But back then, um, like we were talking about, there was no career track for engineering.
Yep. Yep.
So I had applied to like my pat at the time. I was joked there's an alternative universe where I succeeded, but like I had applied to Harvard
You would,
to do an
you and me both.
MBA. But like I'd applied to Harvard to do MBA, Harvard, MIT. Like I had a really good GMAT. I was just like, okay, well, I'll just get into like management consulting or like go to McKinsey or Bain or whatever. Like that's
Yep.
what else am I gonna do? Like you know, like. But I wrote all these essays, and then I just realized like one, I like managing people and I wanted to build my own company, but also like I just prefer coding. Like I think managing people is the hardest thing I ever did, but I
Yeah.
just like coding.
Yeah.
Like I just like coding and I wanted to code. And I just decided I was going to try to build a business where I'm still trying, 12 years later, but basically I just wanted to code. And
Yep.
I think that's what it just comes back to with me is I just always want to code
Yeah.
and I want to be involved with code. Like which is great now because like I'm so out of it like even for the engineering management track.
Yeah.
Like I know all these titles now. I had to look it up because like I was dealing with a potential acquisition and I was just like, what title would I give myself? Like I don't even know where I fit with
Mm-hmm.
that. And I fell on like principal engineer or something like that. Like, something I think you're supposed to be like basically expert in multiple fields and then you do a lot of mentoring. Like I like teaching devs. I
Yeah.
like devs. So it's like,
Distinguished. That's the one you
yeah,
want because that's the absolute top level.
yeah,
Because,
distinguished. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
like, yeah, but just like in terms of what the tasks was, and that we talked
Right.
about it when we were in Portland actually, because I started doing a bit of consulting around that, like
Mm-hmm.
fractional engineering leadership. I
You
wish
were
I
at
could do
WordCamp
more of
US
it.
in Portland.
WordCamp US in Portland, and I didn't know there was a need for that, and there's kind of a bit of a need. Like it's like engineering leadership is interesting because like a lot of times like we talked like a lot of these smaller shops it's their leader guy that gets promoted. It's exactly my problem, right? It's those
Yep.
people they become the CTO and stuff and then they don't have time to do the actual engineering leadership, but they don't have enough, it's not big
Right.
enough for them to do it, have somebody full-time do it. So
Yep.
there's a bit of a space for that, but I do enjoy that. But yeah, it's like it's weird for like the career path. Like I'm always trying to figure it out on my own because it was just never that simple. Um, when I started off. Like it was just like nobody had asked these questions. Google was still relatively new, like, you know, and they're kind of like the forefront of like having that kind of engineering track
Yeah.
internally. So it was a really weird time, like, and yeah, it was just, but it always goes back to coding for me. Like I like developers. It's the same thing as you. I love developers. I built a product for developers. I love developers. I want to make their life easier. I want to
Hmm.
make my life easier, and it's easier to empathize, right?
Yep.
When you're
Well,
you're all the time,
sorry.
right? No, go
Yeah,
ahead.
not to cut you off. I was going to say, I think like it's been so interesting. And I think like doing this show was like a big trigger into spending time with developers, but in a way that obviously can help me market my business. Right. And so people can
Yeah,
get to understand sort of these different types of developers and, you know, what they care about and what they want, because my clients are building tools for developers. Right. So the
yeah,
sort of the things you enjoy.
yeah,
But so when I was at where I'm getting to, right, is like I was at WordCamp US, you know, you were there, obviously we got to
yeah,
connect there quite a bit. And then there was an event in early December called Commit Your Code in Dallas
yeah.
that Danny Thompson brought together. So, a very developer curated event. He's a developer. He built the event, he brought together developers. And I was saying that at the event, it was like interesting how all these people were like, yeah, I'm normally introverted, but like, you know, I love these types of events. I want to talk to other devs. And I was like, see, like, we are not antisocial. And so I actually tweeted it
Oh
out
my
and I was
God.
like, we are
I
so
do you
not
want to go on a
antisocial.
complete trend? Do you want to go on a complete crazy tangent right now? Because I have this is like something I'm working with my therapist, but I want to pitch maybe I'm trying to write the pitch for WordCamp Europe.
Ooh. Well, let's come.
I
Let me
think
finish this and then let's
yeah,
talk about this
yeah,
because I
yeah,
think you have tons of it. So what I did
yeah,
is I just tweeted it really quick.
yeah.
And so I know you're going to have tons of feedback. As I tweeted it really quick and I was like, developers are not antisocial. We are antisocial to anyone who is not us. If we find out that you're a fellow developer or a fellow programmer or whatever, it's like an instant relationship. Like I don't remember the exact time that you and I first met. I think it was WordCamp
Mhm.
San Diego, but
I don't
it happens
remember.
it
Yeah, it's
happens and it never fails that I meet someone else and they're like, "You're a developer?" And I'm like, "You're a developer?" And then all of a sudden, like, we're best friends. It's like stepbrothers, you know, it just is like instant. So let's
yeah.
talk about this and what you're
Yeah.
thinking
Okay.
and your
So
soapbox.
my soapbox. I mean, I'm writing my year in review still right now because they. I mean, last year was 10,000 words, so it's just like it's there's yeah,
Jeez.
it's like at 3,000 or something right now.
Wow.
So last year I talked a lot about basically autism. Basically, like
Mm,
I'm a high functioning autistic person, basically, and I'm just slowly coming to grips with that.
sure.
But one of the things that my I lost my first therapist got sick this year, and I got a new I found a new one who specializes with adult autistic people, especially
Mm,
people in their 40s, like me. You were just not diagnosed, basically. Like most
sure.
people, you learn through basically you learn that you're autistic. I don't have any kids, so basically, but for most people, they learn they're autistic because
With their kids.
their children get a diagnosis and they're like, wait, I'm like that. So does that mean? And then like the answer is yeah. And so,
The answer is yes.
but I learned so much, and I realized that so many of us like developers are like that.
Yep.
And
Lots of
so what got me really
neurodivergence.
excited, yeah, lots of neurodivergent. But what got me really excited about what you said is that my therapist talked this year about this theory called the double empathy problem,
Oh,
which comes from this research that it comes from in the 2010s. So it's really recent. But basically, the stereotype about like, especially autistic people is that they're not good socially, right?
sure.
So the premise of the research was like, okay, we're going to take neurotypical people, neurodivergent people. If we put them together, they're going to struggle, right? So like
Sure.
that's like assumed. But what happens if we separate them? Well, we'd assume the neurotypical people are going to be fine because like they know how to socialize and stuff like that. But we expect that the neurodivergent people will not be able to socialize really well because they struggle socially. But that's not what happened. When you separated both of them, they did fine. And that's because they communicate differently. And
Mm,
that comes back to what you were saying about it's just
they want like
developers,
themselves.
they're kind of like there a lot of it is neurodivergence, right? So like
Yeah.
that's why they always like even like if you want to talk about it, like that's why a lot of the job postings, the way like they screen people, like they're looking a bit for like that kind of neurodivergence in candidates. You know, that doesn't mean
Yep.
that if you're not neurodivergent, you can't be a programmer. It's just like you think about the stereotypes of programmers and all that stuff. It's a lot of that. But
Yep.
it's really interesting because that's why like when you put programmers together, like they understand like, oh, like I can't deal with people right now. Completely okay. Totally get it. Like go away. Go find your safe space. You know, like
Exactly. But then
yeah.
you also can sit next to each other and be like, I can't deal with people right now, and just completely be in your own little zone, sitting next to each other
Yeah.
and not
And you're
care
not gonna
because
offend it.
they
You're
get
not
you.
offending anyone. Yeah, and you're not offending anyone.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
And so it's really interesting. So I really want to talk a lot about that basically because there's a lot more stuff, but like it's just the way you talked about it made me think about that all the time because the
I
double
agree.
empathy problem is basically just you don't communicate. So you have to empathize with the other side. So if you want to, you have to double empathize. So you have to think about what you're thinking, translate it to what they're thinking, and then translate what they're saying back to you. So it's a lot of work. That's why
Mm.
a lot of times people feel tired, right? Like, you know, you get tired of, you know, it's very common for developers, like you know, you deal with a non-developer person and you're like, I'm tired of this. Like, I can't deal with that anymore.
Yep,
And it's just because it's just demanding to
it
do all
is.
this. And I've been lucky because I'm high functioning. Like I can do a lot of it, but you saw me at Portland, I just come out of like a burnout, like an autistic burnout, and I was like much less social. Like I was like, oh, I need to
Yep.
take time off, you know, like it go my room, I would sleep and stuff like that because I was there to network. Like, you
Yes.
know, like
Yep.
we just talked about hiring, right? Like I do consulting. How do I get clients and work is networking. So I have to be
Absolutely.
on. Like so like when I need my recharge, I go back and then but it's exactly what you're talking about. That's why I would love to do like I always wanted if I had more time to bring back LoopConf, you know, the
Oh,
WordPress
Loop Conf was so
conf.
good.
Yeah,
Ryan,
LoopConf
let's bring back Loop Conf
I
in SLC. It has to be an SLC. Like needs to be
I think I'm trying to get Raquel. Like we have a friend named Raquel that is
Wonderland
trying to organize
Curious.
that's trying to organize events now. So in the WordPress space, so she's doing a business one. But I told her like if that's successful, you should look into doing that one next because I think there's a lot of need for that and yeah developers want to hang out with each other and
They do.
they want to talk about nerdy
Dev
stuff
stuff. Yep.
and talk shop and stuff like that. Like I had speaking of like all this neurodivergent stuff, like I learned really early on that I should just not talk about programming. So I just not never talk about it. Like the only time I talk
Oh,
about
that's so
programming is when
heartbreaking.
but it's true though. Like my parents like my mom was a dentist. Like a lot everybody was like kind of on the medical side. I faint to blood, so
Mm.
I always joke that I went to the other applied science. Like my sister is a veterinarian, but like I just like I faint to blood, so it's like it's over. Like I can't do, also I have my shaking too, so it's just can't be a doctor, can't do that. But they would always be really interested in what they were talking about, but I would like start talking about programming stuff and they would glaze their eyes would glaze over, you know. And it was the same thing with a lot of my family. Like it was just even when I went on my own, they didn't quite understand what I did for a
Mhm.
living. But once I started doing public speaking, they're like, "Oh, Carl's a public speaker." I was like, "Oh, okay." You know, like he speaks at conferences, and then they're
They
like,
can
"Okay,"
understand that.
they can understand that. But it taught me really early on that if I want to navigate the social world, I just don't talk about programming. So sometimes it's hard
Mm.
to me to get me to talk about it unless we're in these kind of safe space because it
Yep.
is a kind of a safe space to be in a conference like that and be able to talk shop um, and I have a larger there's a slightly different problem too in the WordPress space, which is the skill range is so large
Oh
and
yeah,
I'm basically
that's yeah.
and I'm at like basically like the 0.001%
Uh-huh.
percentile like at the top. So I know all the smart people that I can talk to, but you know, like half the time I just there's not that much conversation to be had in the first place. But that's the reality of it. And but that's why those events are important. That's why
I
I
agree.
was brought up LoopConf, and I said like I would love to bring that back, because there's just there's just something about having a space for developers where they're just like, okay, like I'm just talking to other developers, we can nerd out, get really offended because you use like spaces versus tabs or like something crazy
Yes.
like that, like
Something crazy.
like okay, go, you're using tabs, like go over there. Although like
Yeah.
I've tried decision
We're
lots of,
anti spaces over here.
yeah, I've changed. I still use spaces, but if I understand now why tabs are better, basically. But it's only for the accessibility aspect that I let them win. Basically, is I remember reading somebody that said like for screen readers, because there's a Alex Stein, I think
Hmm.
he's in the WordPress space. Like he's a blind programmer, and I think it was through him that I heard about it. But basically, if you have spaces on the Braille reader, it's like 4 characters, right? So it just takes a
Uh,
lot of space. It's not like accessible for, a tab is 1 character
so
on
tabs
so
win is what you're
so
saying.
tabs win basically. I still use
Woo!
but I still
So
use spaces,
validated.
but I still use spaces. Eventually I'll just do a whole thing where I'll switch to tabs. I haven't pulled the trigger on that yet, but I admit that for that reason I think you should use spaces, not spaces,
Yeah.
tabs,
Yeah.
just from an accessibility standpoint, because
Yep.
I'm really for that. And I think that was like before that, I didn't care. Like I was just use
Yeah.
whatever you want. I really like spaces, but when I heard that argument, I was like, okay, there's an actual
There's a
real
right answer.
there's a right answer, because it does affect them
Yeah. Yep.
negatively,
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
because even if you're like, oh well, it's 4 spaces, but there's only so many characters they can have on this screen, right? Like it's not
Yep.
like us where
Totally.
you can like just make your screen like zoom out or something like that, and all that stuff. Like they don't have that option. So for
And I'm
me,
sure
that was,
it probably wastes their
yeah,
time too, because it has to read through each space. So it's probably
yeah.
like space, 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 space. And you're
Yeah,
like, that's
exactly.
annoying, you
Yeah,
know?
and then imagine when you're like, if you're like, especially in the WordPress space where they like love indenting for like 8 levels of
No
indentation in the
good
code,
reason.
and then and you're like, oh well, okay, like this line is just all spaces. I don't actually know what like you're in the Braille reader, and then it's like just all spaces. You never know what's on the other side because it just goes off. But yeah, no. So
It's
when
got
I
to be
heard
hard.
that, I was like, no, this is legit.
Yep.
It's a bit harder to change like decades of your own kind of preference, but
Especially for years. You've been
yeah,
doing it for
yeah,
years.
yeah. But when I heard that, I was like, because before that, it felt so like,
It
okay,
was just a
well,
funny argument.
yeah, it was a funny argument. Oh, well, with tabs, you can adjust it to whatever you like and all that stuff. And I was like, I get that, but it's like really annoying for like formatting, like when you're doing
Hmm.
output and things like that. But I just felt like, no, okay, like if you're somebody that needs like has special needs around like your screen
Hmm.
reader, like, and it does negatively impact you, like I feel like that trumps basically
Any opinion? Yeah,
any opinion you have basically on that. And so
I agree.
that's why I say like I'm not, I don't say reluctantly, but like it's hard, like I said, it's hard to change your own habits, because like I've
It
always
is.
used spaces, but I would tell somebody now like you're better off using tabs if you can,
Yep.
for that reason.
Yeah, for
Just
sure.
because, yeah, even if there's not a ton of people, like, I think about that all the time, because I'm just like programming sweet. Like if you can do it, which is like amazing to me, like I can't even imagine having to do that. But there's a non-negligible amount of people that are, blind or
Yeah.
have like high sight issues, and that is useful for them. So it's like that's really important. So
Well,
that's
yeah,
where I found
totally.
myself.
Well,
Yeah.
coming back around to like the neurodivergent side of it, right?
Yeah.
So speaking more to that, and like,
Yeah.
I think whether you're neurodivergent or not, I think the thing that you spoke to with that relates to sort of like anyone who might be blind as a developer or whatever is like it's a passion for us. Like it is not a
Yeah.
job. And I think that a lot of people really struggle to relate to that and also really struggle to understand our work in that way. Like
Yeah.
my husband doesn't get it. He's just like, it's your job. And I was like, it's my life. Like
Yeah,
it's
it's
like my
hard.
everything. And so I think like if you are of the mindset, right, that programming is a beautiful thing for you because you love to build things with Legos very similarly, right?
Yeah.
Then it's you don't let those sort of neurodivergence or other disabilities kind of slow you down, right? You just work around them and still very admirable. But I think that what I'm getting to is like when programming's in your blood, it's in your blood and there's no stopping it, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really hard. Like it's that's why like it yeah, I mean, you've said it perfectly, you know, like that's why I keep going back to programming. Like I get
Exactly.
pushed into like different directions and then when I listen to my heart, I'm just like what I really want to do. Like it's that's the same reason a lot of developers dream about having their little side business
Mm-hmm.
because they just want to tinker on the like one of the best um uh it was a blog post. I'll try to find it for you if you want. I don't know if you do show notes, but basically,
I do, yeah.
it was called like something about garden. But basically, like I just want to putter in my garden. Basically, like
Oh,
oh, I
yes,
want to
yes, yes.
like I'll find it's Bear blog. I think
It's your hobby. You want to
but
go
it's a
play with your hobby.
yeah, but it's like if you do gardening, right? Like you want to
Yep.
just go putter in your plants. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you know, like I basically at some point like I work on a product called Emir and basically I wanted to modernize the code for like fix all this stuff to like make it like at the recent PHP versions. And then I just
Yeah.
like
Yep.
tinkered and fixed it and I could you know, I could just if you want to spend time like writing a test or doing the stuff, you can just like putter around and do that stuff. And that's a lot of you know when you talk to programmers that wish that had their own little business it's like they're not necessarily looking to have like I'm not looking for a six figure a year necessarily like business like I'm just looking for something where I can like wake up in the
Go play.
morning and like work on my code and make again it's a developer product just make people's life easier like I don't have a ton of clients but like the clients that use my product love it so
Yep.
that makes me super happy I wish I could reach more people and that's different that's a bit like the struggle with your clients but that's
You
like
are
all
one
you
of my
want.
clients, technically,
Yeah,
if that's the
yeah,
case.
technically,
You
yeah.
are my client profile.
I am your client profile in a way. Just like I just make $1,000 a month, so it's like I'm not
You're
in
a
your
technical
client
founder.
profile in the revenue, but it's that
But,
energy,
but
right?
here's the thing though. You're just to speak to you only because there's
Yeah,
an opportunity here, and I rarely talk about my business. But
yeah.
I think here's the
Of
thing
course,
though,
do
is
it.
like you could be a 5,000, a $10,000 business. If your clients love your product as much as they do, there are more of your clients out in the world,
Of course,
likely,
yeah,
who love
yeah.
your product. So it's just
It's hard
finding
to
them,
market.
which
Yeah,
is
it's
not
finding them.
easy.
It's hard. No, that's it. It's not easy, and it's like a WordPress product. Although I'm like looking to branch out. I don't want to get into the stupid drama, but basically, but yeah, like the clients that I use it stick with it because they love
Yeah.
it. You know, because I'm
Yep.
always like, and I wish I could do more. Like all, I have like this laundry list of ideas of things that I would love to build, but I'm just like, I have to do consulting, I have to live, you know,
Yeah.
and I don't, and you know, but that's a lot of what the programmer is. You talk about programmers that like want to build their little business. I would argue that most of the time when I talk to them, they're not looking for a huge payout necessarily.
Yeah.
Like
They
if
want to scratch that
I
itch. They want to
they
do
want to
something.
scratch
They
that
want to,
itch. Like
yeah.
like when I was looking to when I was having acquisition talks, like I was just looking to okay, like how much do I need? Like I would go backwards and I was like, okay, how much do I need so that I can just like program for the rest of my life, basically, and
Yeah.
like build stuff, whatever it
Come
is,
build
like
stuff with me.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you have my email.
Yeah,
We talk.
I do.
So, but it was like just building stuff is fun,
Yep.
and I know some programmers that do it a lot more than me. Like I have a friend in particular, like who just like is always like trying to break shit. Basically, he
Mm.
has the hacker gene. He has the hacker gene. I have the. I always say like I have the reverse engineering gene. Like it's
Yeah,
like they're different. They're different things. I always
they
tell
are.
people like the hacker is like, did they think about this edge case? They're always like trying to break it in some way,
Hmm.
and then the reverse engineering. You don't necessarily have either of them, but I just know I'm a really good reverse engineer because I'm really
Yep.
curious about how they got it. Like, how did
Yes.
they get
Yep.
there? And then you like try to reverse, okay, what could they have used, what could they have done, and then you kind of build from that, which is very different from like breaking stuff because
I
like
agree.
he's crazy. Okay, so we're dealing with a lot of nerds, so there's probably a couple of World of Warcraft people in there,
Oh,
but
guaranteed.
he
Lots of gamers.
so basically in the it was the third expansion. The second expansion of World of Warcraft was like kind of like, it's called Rat of Lich King, and they had an event that was called like zombies. They had zombies, and this game is two-sided. You have one side, you have like Horde Alliance basically, but during that event, if you were a zombie, you were on the third side, zombies, and basically you couldn't build a guild that was like could only be on one side. But what he did is he got zombies to sign his guild charter, and then he basically so he had characters on both sides, and then he got scared to even log in because they were like, if you find they find out like that I have like a guild. Now they have it as a feature, like it doesn't matter anymore. But like 10 years ago, he just broke it. Like he was
That's
just like,
incredible.
but like yeah, but you just need people that have that brain, right? Like it's
I
like
agree.
like, and he's a self-taught developer. Like he has high school education, but he's like kind of like
Paula,
uh
me
savant
too.
level. Yeah, savant level. I mean, he's so funny. Like he works with maps and stuff like that, and he's the most geographically challenged person I've ever met. Like he can't go 2 blocks without using a GPS, basically, but he works with maps
But
all the time.
but when you know how to solve problems, you know how to solve problems.
Exactly. So it's great, but that's what I love about programming. Exactly. It's like you have that just it's all about building stuff and like fixing problems, breaking things. Like I don't know.
I agree.
There's nothing like it. So that again, that's why like you go back to it. Like if it like you told your husband, it's in your blood, right? Like
Yep.
I like that a lot. And I like programmers and they're my people. That's why like it was really hard to think about management
Yep.
um
Absolutely.
like a decade ago because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, fully agree. Okay, so let's actually talk shop a little bit more.
Okay,
We've
go.
already been on here for a long time, so we're like
I'm you
nearing
could
the
have me for
end,
two
but
hours, you know me, right? So
I would
I
if I
could
didn't have like meetings.
yeah.
Okay, so what are your favorite tools in terms of like developer tools, right? You like building
Okay.
tools for developers, but what do you like using? What's your kind of
Okay.
tool stack?
Yeah. What? So I'm still very involved in the PHP space.
Yeah,
I'm a big PHP. Is it Stan when you're a fan of like basically like I don't know, but
sure.
basically I'm a PHP fan.
Yep.
And actually I was just at I had a Christmas party dinner just before the holidays with a bunch of programmer friends. They're all in the video game industry, and it was me and another friend. We were talking about PHP, and we were just saying PHP is great. Like I just love PHP. So inside PHP, there's
I love PHP
Laravel.
too.
You
Yep,
you asked about Laravel on
I
LinkedIn
did.
recently. I really like Laravel. I mean, the programmer in me, the kind of like OCD programmer in me doesn't like Laravel all that much because there's a lot of magic, but it gets stuff done. Like it's
Yeah,
just like
totally.
you get like like at the end of the day, like you asked about Rails too. Like if I had to
Hmm.
learn another framework next, I would probably learn Rails
Yep.
because it's the same kind of energy. Like if you're a developer that wants to get stuff done, like I pay attention to a lot of what Taylor says for that reason because
Sure.
like
Yep.
Taylor has a good sense of what developers want.
Right.
Like
He is a developer.
he's a developer. He builds for himself,
Exactly.
and so I really like uh, PHP, Laravel. I was trying to think of stuff that frustrates me recently, but I mean, a lot of stuff that frustrates me recently is all database related. Like I just
Hmm.
like back. I had to rewrite I had to like one like MySQL and MariaDB not not working together anymore. It's a pain in the ass. Like I find there's a lot of pain around databases. And again, I'm a sysadmin. Like I don't have a perfect solution to how we make that less painful. Like I
Yep.
know like there was like I played around with some of the auto scaling stuff too, but it wasn't even around that. It was just like backups and restore. Like
Yeah.
backup
Just
and
common
restore
functionality was
is
painful.
just backup and restore. Like the number of times like a backup breaks for me when I'm dealing with client stuff. Like I'm just like, okay, I have to manually edit it because it's like it was taken in one version of this and it's not compatible for that. Like it's just really obnoxious.
Hmm.
A lot of the stuff that you like, that and like, I mean, this one's like really for the sysadmin in your audience. Mail servers. Mail servers are the worst. I still
Mail
have to
servers
manage
are the
some
worst.
mails. Mail servers are the worst. I still have to manage one for a client, and I hate every time that I have to deal with it. I'm so thankful for Chat GPT now to like save me from having to scour through old Usenet posts to try to find
Yep.
out what's going on with this archaic stuff. But I have huge respect for anybody that works with mail servers on a daily basis and keeps them running and deals with spam and all that stuff because it's in mailboxes and all that stuff. It's just really painful. Like, but yeah, like on the dev side, it's like it's really like the date. Honestly, the database stuff now feels like the worst. It's like
Yeah.
you know,
Is it like in like a WordPress sort of like tech stack? 'Cause I feel like databases are such a
yeah,
nightmare there, but like in sort of
yeah.
like other technology, databases are a lot more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the day-to-day usage of the database.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like, oh, I mean, if I had a choice, I'd use Postgres, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
it's like most of the even Laravel, they're kind of like MySQL heavy. Like it's just the
Yep.
PHP just loves MySQL.
Yeah. It really does.
So they really like MySQL in PHP land. So you just end up using a lot of it. But um, I don't know if I'd have as many problems with
Mm.
Postgres and stuff like that. Again, because like it's just on the MySQL MariaDB fork stuff. Like also like I'm a bit worried for the next like decade. Like there's just a lot of forks happening. Like Nginx got forked. Like I think Redis got forked. Like it's just because and it's just really hard to like like the compatibility around all those things is like hard. Like it's just
Yeah.
it's annoying around that stuff. So, but
I
yeah, I
hate to
mean,
I hate
yeah,
to say that this is even a thing because like obviously these are my clients, so they're
yeah,
fruitful and necessary and like we love them, but I think the developer tools ecosystem has kind of sort of like gotten a little too crazy. And I'm not saying it's too crazy and that there are too many tools per se, but I think that we're seeing a lot more of developer tools being creative. And I think that
yeah,
when we do that, it's developers trying to make a tool, right? And we kind of talked back to, how that can be problematic and not understanding sort of the growth side of it and actually the market fit side of it.
yeah,
But I think that that is sort of the negative, right, of all the developer tools is like you want to make an opinion about a developer tool that you want to start using, but it's like, does it perfectly fit with everything else, right? Can I use
right,
Laravel and then
exactly.
use, yeah.
Well, I think a lot about that. It's kind of weird, right? Because so with Emir, a lot of people are like, okay, what do I use locally? Because for Emir, just for a background, is like basically infrastructure management. Like it's
Hmm.
like basically the Laravel Vapor, but for WordPress right now. And
Oh, sweet. That's cool.
so it manages your AWS infrastructure and all that stuff. But a lot of people are like, okay, but what do I use locally? And I'm like, whatever you want. I did not make this. I
Yeah,
don't want to pit. So it's weird because some developers they just want to be handheld.
they do, especially in
Uh,
WordPress.
it's yeah in WordPress, but I find like it's just newer developers, maybe some that come from
Yeah.
boot camp, where it's not like we talk about it like when it's in your blood because like I think I think we'll see more of that, because the job market's a bit difficult. I think
Hmm.
we might see more of the people that stay are the people that really are that's in their blood kind of thing. Because
Yeah,
like a lot of the
I
boot
agree.
camps was like, oh, there's a ton of money here. Let me just do a boot camp and then do programming.
I agree with that.
And and they want to be held handheld, right? Like they're not asking questions. They'll go to Chat GPT and just be like, can you do the whole thing for me? And then when they don't, they're just upset.
I feel like
And
those are the developers that will make it through sort of this AI boom, right? Because there's all this conversation of like Cursor and Bolt and V0 and all these tools that can help you write code.
I
But it's like, who's
tried
going to
them.
stay? It's going to be the ones that's in their blood. Yeah, you tried them.
Yeah, I tried them. I mean, I want to do a talk on that. Like, I like
Ooh,
AI more as
do it on the
a,
Built for Dev Hub.
huh?
Do it on
Sorry.
the Built for Dev Hub. My little
Yeah.
ticker across the bottom. People don't even know I have a
Yeah.
giant developer community of like developer
Yeah.
hangouts, developer events.
But yeah, I've been pitching this talk for a year and a half now. But basically, I think of AI more as a pair programming tool.
Exactly, exactly. It's more of your buddy,
Um,
your little
it's
assistant.
yeah, your little assistant, right? And I think it works better for, again, the people that it's in their blood, right? Because like
Exactly.
you're like, I use it. You know what it's been the most useful for? Like, it's kind of funny because I was talking with, we have a friend in common called Toby, and I was talking with, he was asking me a question. He's like, why did you name it this way? And I was like, oh, I just had a conversation with Chat GPT about naming stuff because, like, the saying in programming, there's two hard things in programming: cache and validation and naming things. And
Naming
ChatGPT
things.
is amazing for naming things. Like, I'll have discussions
Mhm.
about it. I'm like, no, I don't like this. Like, can you think of other things? And then eventually, like, we nail down a name that like fits what's going on in my head. I love that. But
Same.
it's kind of having that discussion. But yeah, so it's hard for tools like for me in the WordPress space. Exactly, like a lot of it want to be handheld, some of them
Yep.
don't. And then I built a tool where you're not supposed to be handheld that much, so it's
Right.
been a lot of struggle for my growth basically because of that.
Mhm.
Because you have, if you're thinking about your clients, if we want to talk shop a bit, probably you have to think about what developers you're aiming for. Are you aiming
Exactly.
for the people like me who just need a really good documentation site? Like, I get comments on my documentation site because I care a lot about documentation, so I wrote a lot of it.
Developer
and
experience
and
matters.
and that's great for those developers, but some of them just want to be handheld. And
Yep.
in that scenario, the document site, they don't really care about it because they're not going to read it.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it's really hard on that respect. That's why I was saying, like they come to me and then they're like, okay, what do I use locally? And I'm like, whatever you want. I'm not here to, like, I try to make the tool for developers. In my mind, the developers are, they're opinionated. They want to work the way they're comfortable with.
Yep.
Uh, so I don't want to, I try as little as possible to get in their way
Yep.
of doing that. And so, but that's a really interesting discussion to have, like when you're talking with your clients,
Yep.
because depending on which type, like archetype of developer they're aiming for, the doc site's useless for them
Yep.
because like nobody's going to go visit it because they just want to be completely handheld.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that comes into like knowing
yeah,
your exact like just to kind of speak to what you're saying, right?
yeah,
And this is how I try to be different. And maybe you and I should get on like a
yeah,
strategy session since you're my friend. I'll
yeah,
like just give you some of my
yeah,
time. But
yeah,
like because there is a target audience for your tool, right? And
yeah,
so when you can figure out that target audience, that's when you can build that experience around them. Because if it is, say, your target audience ends up being just depending on your solution, right? I'm just
yeah,
hypothetically throwing out
yeah,
examples here. Let's say that your target audience ends up being developers who do need to be handheld. That changes
yeah,
everything, right? If your target audience is less technical, but is still building WordPress sites, still has to deal with infrastructure, but they don't necessarily know, and I'm not saying this is your audience, I'm just
yeah,
throwing out things. You're going to have more docs. You're going to have an onboarding experience. You're likely going to have tools that connect things together
yeah,
that connect to their pre-existing solutions. You may even have to have an opinion around what to use locally. You don't have to build it, but you can say, I think you should use this, and here's exactly how you connect it. Because like you said, there is
yeah,
a there's a scope with a target audience, right? And it's what does that person look like? And when you can actually sit down and narrow into that exact audience, then you can build a product that perfectly does exactly what they need.
yeah,
And you know where they're hanging out. So you know how to go find them, you know what they like.
yeah.
It's a very interesting, but yeah, at the same time, right? You're like in this technical
I'm in the,
founder in this state
yeah,
of like, what do I do?
yeah,
Where
and
do
I'm
I
also in the
go?
WordPress space, which is the worst,
Exactly. The
basically.
WordPress
Because
space is
like
more
I'll lose,
complicated.
because the WordPress space is like so large on skill level that it's like impossible,
Mm,
basically. Because
it is.
like I had
Unless you
some
niche
people tell me,
down.
yeah, but I'm like I always joke, right? I'm a niche within a niche within a niche in WordPress. Like I did an object-oriented programming book for WordPress. Like you have a
Yeah,
quote,
that's
you have a quote on it, so on the
yep,
landing page. So it's really hard because like I'll get clients, they're like, I can't install a plugin. I'm like, of course you can't install a plugin. Like this is like an enterprise thing. And I have enterprise clients, they're like, oh no, this is fine. Like, but I know who my target are. It's just like in the WordPress space, it's hard because it's like all the enterprise agencies and they have like
yep,
deal the IP and all that stuff. Like without getting into all the details for like the non-WordPress people, but they're like I've been in this space for 5 years trying to market this. Like I have a good idea. Like I what I do a lot is plant seeds. Like I call it planting seeds. Like I just like build relationships with
yep,
agencies and stuff like that. People that I know have the technical know-how to use the product.
exactly.
And
And
then
need it.
when they're ready, they have the client, the project where they're ready to use it, then we start having the discussion. So it's like a much longer term thing because it's
Hmm.
so niche. It's so niche, right? But just talking on for like the larger products that are thinking about developers, yeah, I've thought about that. Like, okay, how do I make it easier? But it's just in WordPress, it'll never solve it all because they'll be like,
Yeah,
okay, you connected to my GitHub repo, it deploys automatic. You put the GitHub action, you made it all automatic and beautiful. I actually don't know how to git push deploy or like what like it's just like there's a lot of people they're just used to like why can't I SFTP into this and I'm
it
just like
totally, totally.
so so it's just really hard on that respect. It's nothing to
Uh-huh.
do with but it shows to like okay who are your developers and but I'm stubborn
Right.
basically. I'm a Taurus. I'm stubborn and I just want to keep building it for people like me and
Exactly.
hopefully there's more like it slowly people find me and then I
Hmm.
eventually I do have a couple of customers but it's hard like it's the reality also of like building developer tools is that
Yeah,
when especially if you're a more advanced devs like you it's hard like when you're trying to deal with the different skill ranges it's hard to build a developer tool where you're like okay I love this tool I think people of my skill level are going to love this tool but actually I need to make it so that lower skill people or like people with different like educational backgrounds or whatnot like we were talking about like boot camp if you come from a
hmm,
boot camp and it's less in your blood like it's more of a like it's a job more than
yeah,
like a passion right like to talk like a millennial right like it's just like for a lot of people programming is for people like me programming is a passion right like if I wanted
yeah,
to make money I'd be like doing something completely else like not programming wise but I wouldn't be sitting in my basement building a product and just doing a little bit of consulting like i just
exactly.
I just so you have to think about that too so when you're thinking about the devs and all that stuff because it's just some of them they're just no I'm using whatever is cool right now because that's where the money is and then just do it all for me please ChatGPT slash cursor slash bolt like write the website for me write the project for me I don't and then it's great for me because I come in after and I clean up their work basically because like because that's like one of the things that people don't the less businessy people don't necessarily understand the more businessy people sorry the less developer people don't understand is that it's easier to write new code than to maintain old one
Yeah, yeah,
and so like for me on my consulting side like I just end up doing that a lot of the time like it's like oh I have to maintain people's old stuff and developers want to work on the new and shiny and they don't want to work on
they
the new
do.
stuff but also from a skill level you need to be more skillful to work on old code like you don't want to
Yep,
break things you have to be able to keep more stuff in your head at once um, so
I
it's
agree.
just so it's yeah sorry we went on a tangent but
That's okay. No, that's where the show's supposed to go. We
yeah
do need to wrap up
yeah
though, because I do
yeah
have a meeting. You gotta love that.
yeah
Okay, so last question. We
yeah
can kind of fill the last 5 minutes here before it's
sure
11 a.m. personally for me.
yeah
What what do you do when you get stuck? Because obviously you work as a consultant, you're also building a
Yeah.
product. You don't work side by side with a lot of developers except for in
No,
your projects and your actual client work.
yeah, yeah, correct,
So how
correct.
do you sort of get unstuck or, work through those challenges when they do arise?
Well, now, like as what we talked about earlier, like now I've I do chat GPT.
I figured.
So and I can give you a super cool example from
Yeah,
just
let's do it.
literally from the holidays. So I was having an issue with Emir. I was having bots sign up, which was really weird because like it just sends a verification email, but I was starting to get like some spam complaints and like weird auto replies because
You need an architect.
they were using the right email. They were
Mhm.
using correct emails, but they were just entering gibberish basically for the full
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
It was like, and I was like, I was trying to talk with ChatGPT, like, how can you like, can we do a gibberish like validator thing? And they were like trying to figure out entropy. Anyways, it was completely off basically. Like I tried a couple of things, couldn't, it wasn't working. But then I asked it, could you think something like give me solutions that are so outside the box, you know?
Ooh,
And it gave me a couple of things. Like it was like use like language models to like evaluate the names. I was like, okay, that's a bit too crazy. But
yeah, that's a little too
it
crazy.
suggested something called Name API. So there's an API that exists. It's like an old site. Like it looks like straight out of the like early 2000s, basically.
I love it.
But it's called nameapi.org, I think, and it's a name parsing API. So it will
Mm,
in multiple languages. Like it supports like Cyrillic and kanjis and all that stuff. But it will you send it a name, and it will return back like you say, okay, I'm giving you a full name, and it'll
yep,
parse it, try to figure out what the first name is, and then it'll give you a confidence interval and a likeliness and of that it's a name. And then I just basically started. So I was like, oh, this is good. And then I was like, start playing with it. Like I had my API tools like Postman, and I was like testing to see. And I was like, okay, like this could work. And I didn't ask more from ChatGPT. I was just like, okay, like this is good.
yep.
And I built it's a Laravel app. So I built a validation tool that just sends the name over via the API, gets it back. If the confidence interval is below a certain threshold, basically you reject it. And all the spam went away, basically. Um, but
That's
that was
awesome.
like, but that was like a way of like, because I was just like, I don't want to put a captcha. Like I hate captchas.
Yep,
So I didn't want to put a
same.
captcha on the site. And I just didn't, I don't send a lot of emails, but I was a bit worried like I'd get like on spam lists or something like
Sure,
that because of
totally,
it. So I was just like, oh, like get me something like, so I
totally.
was a bit stuck, right? Like I was a bit
Yep,
stuck, and I was just like, okay, get me find me something
you've got
crazy,
creative solutions. Yeah,
like throw me some stuff, like, and
yep,
then I can just some stuff it was hallucinating. You still got to do your editing job, but basically
for sure.
it threw that out, and I was like, oh my god, this is an actual thing. It exists. They have a free tier, which is super generous, and I was just like, cool. I built it in it took me I think 2 hours. I built it, shipped it, and then it was done. It was done, and it was like, but a lot of it is Chat GPT. Like Chat GPT is really good at getting on you unstuck. Like it's really good
Yep,
at like the blank page problem. If you do a lot, I do a lot of writing too, right?
I agree with that. Give me somewhere
So
to start. Give me an
so
outline at least.
give me what will you write? What will you
Yep,
do? Like because sometimes I've written a lot, so I know when it's giving me stuff that I think is trash, but
yep,
I'm trying to get substance. I'm trying to get the
absolutely.
ball rolling, and sometimes that's what you need. Like so for me, it's like my go-to. Like I always tell people, like outside an IDE, I can't think of a tool that changed my way of working
Right.
more than Chat GPT did. Like, and again, I'm not using it like cursor or
Yep,
whatnot. Like
totally.
I try
You're
because
just
I
getting
use
unstuck fundamentally, not
yeah,
necessarily programmatically.
because I saw on Twitter on like the Peter levels and stuff. They're like cursor, cursor, cursor. This is like the bomb, and I've seen like some videos of people using it. And look, I get
It's
it, but
crazy
I think
powerful.
it is great, but I think
Yep.
it's a tool for the people that we were talking about, the boot
Yep.
campers.
Yep.
Um,
Or it's a tool. I mean, like, or me, right? Like, I
yeah,
don't code a lot. And we talked about that, how I've like
yeah,
gotten distant away from my technical
yeah,
chops. And so it's beautiful for me to just go in there and be like, oh, walk me through this. Like, I would go in there and I'm like, create me a getting started guide. And I did it for one of my clients because I couldn't find like this is a whole digression, but
yeah,
there was, documentation was hard to find, right? And so I was like, give
yeah,
me a getting started guide and walk me through it. And like it had errors, but I was able to push back and be like, that's not going to work. You didn't even ask me for the API key. So I could like push back enough, but
yeah, of
I
course.
do agree you have to like technologically understand what you're doing. And
Yeah,
then it's incredibly valuable.
yeah. I think that the cursor versus ChatGPT as a pair programmer, I think speaks a lot to like the passions versus like there was somebody on Twitter. It was like just the doers versus like I don't know the tinkerer or I forget what they were talking about, but
I
the
get what you're
people that
saying. Yeah.
just want to do, they just want it done. They'll
They want
just
the
use
results.
cursor. They want the
Yeah.
result. They don't care. But like the people that are more on the passion side, like I think Chat GPT more as a pair programmer fits them better because like I want to get my hands in it a bit
Yep.
more
Yep.
than just having a discussion with somebody and fixing stuff. And like I want my variables a specific way, and it can learn
Or
all
if
that
you're
stuff.
Yeah, or if
But
you're like in an enterprise role. So like Cursor, there was one call or an interview a few weeks ago where they essentially were using it as a productivity tool. So they asked their teams to start using it, which I think is valuable. But I fully agree with what you're saying, right? It's like if you're already deep into it, you're likely not to use
yeah,
Cursor. You're likely to solve your
yeah, I
problems
mean,
earlier.
I'm always like keen on paying attention to like tools and things like that, just because I find it interesting. Like, I was an early user of ChatGPT, and I think there was a lot of benefits once it got really good.
I agree.
Um,
Okay, so I do
but
have to go.
yeah,
But two
okay,
notes. First note, you should probably come in my business more because you like love dev tools so much. And like
yeah,
I actually could use a bit more like technical nerdiness when it comes
yeah,
to
of
some of the dev
course,
tools. So we
let's
should
do
talk
it.
about that. Yeah, absolutely. And then the
Send me an
second note,
email.
I will. The second note I wanted to just throw out ArcJet. So if you go look, so it's arcjet.com. It's a developer
Okay.
tool. One of my past clients, I guess I could say it's still current. We still have some impending things, but that's what they do. Actually, was the solution that you built out is like, yes, there are many different ways that someone can come in and actually start to like spam you or annoy you or hit your endpoints or overuse things. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
a security as code tool. So it allows you to basically put those security layers into your code. I think
Yeah,
that you would
yeah,
like it, and other people listening would probably like it. And since
yeah.
they're a
I'm
client,
looking
I'm going to
now.
shout it out.
I
So
don't know
they're
if the
working on the
PhD.
Laravel one. So
Okay,
they're
Laravel.
modern JS right now, and I think
Yeah,
they're working towards
yeah.
that future of like the Django and the Laravel world.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
definitely keep
I
it in
see
mind.
it. Django, Ruby on Rails, Laravel SDK is coming soon.
Exactly.
Yeah, bug detection, rate limiting, email validation. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's it. They're little things, but you nothing like bots and hacking makes you think outside the box more.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly.
even for my consulting stuff, like I have to deal with a lot of um bots
Mm-hmm.
at the server level,
Yeah, I can
and
imagine.
doing that in clever ways is tricky, because
Yep.
they can't use Cloudflare and stuff like that, so you have to be a bit more creative. But yeah,
I agree.
absolutely. But that looks cool. I just looked at it, so that's great.
Yeah, super, super, super cool founder. Okay, so to wrap up, where can folks find Carl, your
Oh my
product,
goodness.
and your
Yeah.
work?
Okay, I lost actually tabbing. I now have a blank screen for the for the restream thing. So, but basically, it's emirapp.com.
Okay, perfect.
So that's my little side product. carlalexander.ca is where I used to write a lot. Now I just basically write my year in reviews, and I have my book there where people can find. I mean, I used to be on Twitter. I'm kind of gone. I'm trying to basically get off social media, to be honest, but I would say LinkedIn now. Like, I
Okay.
think that's where I'm like trying to be active more. I mean, I'm not really posting, but if I started to post, I'd probably post on LinkedIn because It's just everybody's kind of more fragmented now, right? Like, and then
LinkedIn is
GitHub,
definitely the go-to for devs
yeah,
or GitHub.
yeah, GitHub, like it's Carl Alexander basically. But yeah, I
Perfect.
think LinkedIn is usually the best, and at this point, and yeah, it's good.
I love it.
I took talk for hours. Uh,
We
I
could,
have my
we
own podcast. We're gonna get you on my podcast now, and then we'll talk for another hour. It'll be great. So
Yes, absolutely. It has been super awesome hanging out with you. Just like we talked about, developers love spending time with each other, which is why I'm investing so heavily in the actual Built for Dev Hub. So, if folks are interested in rewatching this after the fact, or to come hang out in some of the other awesome developer events and hangouts, you can visit that at hub.builtfor.dev. Carl, it has been so awesome talking to you. This will be on all the channels it has been streamed and also a podcast. And I look forward to coming on your podcast
yeah,
soon.
I'll send you an email about that. Okay.